What's the most legendary way to win a chess game? It's not with a queen, a rook, or even a flashy knight sacrifice. Arguably, the holy grail of checkmates is delivered by a simple pawn, using a rule so specific, so obscure, that plenty of chess players go their whole lives without ever seeing it happen. This checkmate is the stuff of myths. In fact, its most famous example was, for decades, considered just that, a myth. A ghost story told by chess players over a board. This is the story of a checkmate so rare, it feels like fiction. It supposedly happened in a tournament back in 1928, and it all hinges on that one rule everyone forgets, en passant. So let's unpack the legendary game that may or may not have happened, separate fact from fiction, and explore why this checkmate is one of chess's most sought-after jewels. Okay, before we time travel to 1928, we have to talk about the rule that makes this whole story possible, en passant. It's French for in passing, and it's the secret weapon of our tale. So, what is it? The rule was created back in the 15th century as a fix. To make games more dynamic, chess evolved to let pawns move 2 squares forward on their first turn, instead of just 1. But this created a loophole. A pawn could suddenly zip right past an enemy pawn on an adjacent file, dodging a capture it would have faced before. En passant was the patch. The rule says that if your opponent pushes a pawn 2 squares and it lands right next to your pawn, you get a one-time only chance, on your very next turn, to capture it as if it had only moved 1 square. Your pawn slides diagonally to the empty square behind the enemy pawn and takes it in passing. If you don't do it right then and there, the opportunity is gone forever. It's a rule that just doesn't come up that often. Most games, the conditions are right. But for a checkmate to happen this way? That requires a perfect storm. One player has to be in a tactical blind spot, and the other needs the vision to see a once-in-a-lifetime shot. For the longest time, people wondered if it had ever actually happened in a serious game. Which brings us to the legend. The year is 1928, at a Christmas tournament in Melbourne, Australia. The players are Gunnar Gundersen and A.H. Fall. The game kicks off with a French defense, a solid, well-respected opening. The first few moves are totally normal, e4 e6, d4 d5. White plays e5, the advanced variation, locking down the center of the board. For a dozen moves, nothing seems too out of the ordinary. The players are developing pieces, castling their kings, and fighting for control. Gundersen, as white, then launches a classic kingside attack. On move 9, he offers a bishop sacrifice with bxh7+, a famous attacking pattern known as the Greek gift. This move rips open the defenses around black's king. Fall, playing black, has to accept the sacrifice, and his king is suddenly dragged out into the open. Gundersen's pieces swarm in. His knight hits g5, his queen swings over to g4, and his h-pawn begins a relentless march up the board. Black's king is being hunted across the board, forced from g8 to h7, and then to g6. Fall is in massive trouble, desperately trying to find a way to fight back. Gundersen keeps tightening the screws, weaving a web of threats that's nearly impossible to untangle. The position is electric. And this is where it all goes sideways. After a flurry of checks and tactical shots, the board lands in a mind-bending position. Gundersen has just played 14. Next 6+, a discovered check from his bishop back on c1. Fall's king is stuck on h6, totally exposed. He has only one legal move to get out of check, a move that seems to solve all his problems, at least for a second. The black king on h6 now has an escape route, the attack seems to be fizzling out, and it looks like black might just survive. So, Fall plays 14, g5. Fall sees his way out. His pawn on g7 can jump 2 squares forward to g5. This one move blocks the check from the white bishop. At first glance, it looks like it saves the day. The black king on h6 now has an escape route, the attack seems to be fizzling out, and it looks like black might just survive. So, Fall plays 14, g5. It was the last move he made in the game. You can imagine the silence in the tournament hall. On the surface, black's king looks like it can breathe again. But Gundersen saw what his opponent missed. He saw the ghost of a rule, the one everyone forgets. Fall's pawn had just moved 2 squares, landing right next to Gunderson's pawn on h5. The conditions were perfect. Gunderson reached out and played 15. hxg6, capturing the black pawn in Passant. Checkmate. Let's break down why this is one of the most brilliant and brutal checkmates imaginable. When Gunderson's pawn moved from h5 to g6, it captured the pawn that was on g5, and it did three things at once. First, capturing the pawn reopened the h-file, meaning Gunderson's rook on h1 was now checking the black king. Second, the pawn's movement also reopened the long diagonal from c1 to h6, meaning Gunderson's bishop was also delivering check. It was a double check. A king in double check has to move, you can't block two attackers at once. But where could the king go? Every escape square was covered. The white queen on g4 controlled h4 and f5. The white knight on e6 covered g7. And the very pawn that delivered the in Passant capture now stood proudly on g6, controlling f7 and h7. There was no escape. It was a checkmate delivered by a capture that was also a double discovered check. It was pure, brutal chess beauty. The story of this game became legendary, the first alleged instance of an in Passant checkmate in a tournament game, a moment to be whispered about for nearly a century. In the end, the in Passant checkmate is more than just a quirky rule, it's a symbol of the hidden beauty of chess. It's a reminder that even the smallest piece on the board, a single pawn, can deliver the most shocking and elegant victory imaginable. It's a move that requires a deep knowledge of the rules and a creative spark to see an opportunity that 99% of players would miss. The legend of the 1928 Gunderson game lives on, not because we can prove it happened, but because of what it represents, a perfect, almost impossible moment of chess brilliance. It's a story that captures the imagination and inspires players everywhere to look for the extraordinary. So what do you think? Is the Gunderson game a true piece of history or a brilliant work of fiction? And have you ever, in one of your own games, delivered or fallen victim to an in Passant checkmate? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating world of chess.